Listen, you smell something?
Human emotions are materializing in the form of a viscous psychoreactive plasm with explosive supernormal potential.
What a discovery, a psychoreactive substance.
Do you know what this equipment is used for?
Boggle or Super Mario Brothers?
We'll have fun!
Yeah! They're still doing it. Really quite good work there.
My friend, don't be a jerk.
We've got no choice. Call the Ghostbusters.
Super Jackpot!
Welcome to Extraplasm Podcast. It's the only podcast on the internet that's proud to welcome you to its slimiest episode ever. I'm your host, Jim Maritato, aka Fake Maniac on the internet, and if you're wondering why it's the slimiest episode ever, it's because this week we are joined by Kevin Mangold, who portrayed Slimer in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Kevin is an actor, stunt performer, a competitive horse jockey, a producer, and an all-around nice human being, and it was an absolute delight to talk with him for this week's episode. We got to chat about his experiences working on Frozen Empire, and there's some really great details in our conversation about the motivations that he brings to playing Slimer that were like so insightful and awesome, and I'm so stoked to bring you one of the coolest conversations that I've been lucky enough to have on this podcast. And really, the first opportunity we've had to engage a performer in a Ghostbusters film firsthand on a mic. So we did it, everybody. But if you're not already following Kevin for real, you need to go out on Instagram right now and follow Horace Stunts, HORACESTUNTS on Instagram, as he's been providing a ton of behind the scenes content about his experiences portraying Slimer in Frozen Empire, going all the way back to the sculpting phase of his suit up to the time that he was on set. And I want to say an extra huge thank you to Kevin for joining the podcast and being so open and gracious with his time this week, because it's a really fun conversation. And it's not every week that we get to talk with somebody who, not only is part of the Ghostbusters creative, and fandom milieu, but also is somebody who is directly on screen in a major motion picture that all of us ran out to go see. So thank you to Kevin for coming on the podcast. And I am so stoked to get into that conversation with you in a few moments. But before we do, we've got to address this week's Ghostbusters headlines.
Still making headlines all across the country, the Ghostbusters are at it again.
Today, the entire eastern seaboard is alive with talk of incidents of paranormal activity.
Phone-in topic today, ghosts and ghost busting.
Extraplasm, read all about it. Ghostbusters headlines coming at ya.
In Ghostbusters Frozen Empire news, we have now reached the point where we can say that Ghostbusters Frozen Empire has brought in about $160 million worldwide and has managed to hold on to its third place slot in box office earnings for another weekend here in the United States. Domestically, Frozen Empire has earned about another $6 million from over 3,000 locations, and with $2.7 million coming in, according to Ghostbusters News, as a result of an uptick last Saturday. So it's essentially sitting right underneath $100 million in the U.S. in terms of its earnings, while it's earned about $60 million outside the U.S. The movie is still slated to open yet this week for South America and India, as well as Saudi Arabia, and it's currently playing on about 8,500 screens internationally. So the movie is out, pretty much everywhere at this point. And as much as you can sort of look at these numbers and say, what do they mean? There's not really a clear answer to that question. Part of the reason I'm talking about this every week, and I'm going to sort of get into a little bit of a minor editorial here for a minute, is that I keep hearing people talk about whether or not this movie is a financial success or failure without knowing how much it costs to make. There's a rumor that it cost $100 million to make, and then there's rumors of how much more was spent on marketing, but nobody actually knows how much was spent on making this movie, except for the people at Sony, because they are the ones who paid the bill. The rest of us have no idea. So I hear a lot of people weighing in on whether or not the movie is a success based off of these box office earnings. And it's important to consider that, like, even in week 3, there's a sudden uptick on a Saturday in terms of earnings, because what do you know? There's not a whole bunch of brand new stuff coming out to the box office that people are running out to go see in competition with this movie that wasn't already out. And so, what does that mean for the take of the movie long term? Who knows? Could this be a movie that sits around in theaters for 6 weeks and suddenly has a second chance or bump because there isn't something else that people want to go see? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe some of you are going to write in and go, are you insane? There's like a Kung Fu Panda movie out and people are going to go see that. And to that I say, maybe they will, but maybe they'll go see Ghostbusters from Frozen Empire too. My point here is that none of us seem to know what the future holds for Ghostbusters, but oddly enough, people keep pointing to these box office earnings as an indicator of whether or not the future is bright or bleak. And the reality is that we're going to see how the movie does in terms of box office earnings alongside streaming rights, alongside DVD and Blu-ray sales, alongside merchandising. And we'll know what the profitability is later. But to be real, I want to say this and just remind people of this. We live in like the most rich time for Ghostbusters fans that's ever existed. I see people worrying about these numbers as if it's going to mean that we don't have more Ghostbusters. And just like keep this in mind if you need a pep talk about this. You currently live in a world where there's a Ghostbusters comic book out, and you heard from this podcast just last week that more of those comic books have been approved already. You are living in a world where you just had a Ghostbusters movie, and the director and the co-writers of that movie have openly said they have more narrative to tell and more story to tell with the characters that they had just on the screen a few weeks ago that you went to go see. And they set up things like a post-credit sequence where the mini puffs could potentially be, stealing trucks and going places that we'd have to go to bust in next. You also have an amusement center that's been completely anchored by a Ghostbusters speakeasy that, if that works well, in terms of using things like the VR stuff that's being offered at that place in Chicago called Wonderverse, then you might get more of those in other cities. And you've got 2 thriving video games on 2 different platforms, one of them home VR based, one of them not VR based, and clear roadmaps of additional content that's coming for each of those things throughout the rest of the year. I mean, this just scratches the surface without getting into stuff like the fact that we know we're getting O-ring Hasbro figures that are coming in June with more announcements about what's to follow, and that the 40th anniversary of the franchise is literally less than 2 months away. And so if you have any doubt about whether or not there's going to be more Ghostbusters, like, don't couch your understanding of that in the box office earnings that have happened over 3 weeks. That's my advice to everybody, because nobody knows what the franchise is actually making. And the reality is that the franchise just reached a point of crossing $1 billion of revenue since 1984. And if you look at the other products that are coming out for the rest of the year, they're not all Frozen Empire oriented. Many of them are just Ghostbusters oriented, because we are in an anniversary year, and there's the potential that they can raise revenue that would be valuable in showing continued value for more media in the franchise that doesn't necessarily have to come just from the box office earnings of Frozen Empire. So I will now climb down from my soapbox. It's not very tall this week, and it's not very wide. It's a very short little, sort of Jim's editorial here. But I mean this. I keep seeing this sort of like, concern or worry about whether or not the franchise is healthy based off the box office earnings. Don't forget, you live in the greatest time to be a Ghostbusters fan, in which more content is currently available for you, and more content and products and things are currently in develop than has ever been the case in the entirety of the rest of your life. And so don't stress the box office numbers. Be excited about what's to come, because there's still so much of it out there. In terms of things outside of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire news, we can talk about video games for a few moments, as we just did. Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed has had a series of community milestones that they have been unlocking over the last few weeks. We've talked about a few of those, and the most recent one we were talking about was the opportunity to unlock a special suit by collecting a number of spores and molds and fungus. That has now been done by the community, and so that's a suit that you can now put on, the eye-catching, as Jason Fitzsimmons of Ghostbusters News calls it, damask suit. And that looks like a floral print suit on like a brown camo thing. It's kind of funny, actually. So the next milestone that they have put out there is a Raise a Cult t-shirt that you can unlock for your characters. It's going to require that 75,000 busters get slimed in online matches before Monday, April 22nd. All of these things are really cool little fun activations that are happening within Spirits Unleashed that have followed on the heels of the DLC that introduced Garaka, and that sort of follows on the heels of Frozen Empire. And so if you're not playing Spirits Unleashed already, you know how I feel about it. At this point, I really love it. A lot of the bugs and things that you used to hear me complain about, many, many months ago have kind of been worked out, and I really enjoy playing that game a lot. But it's something that you can go and pick up now very affordably, get involved in if you're not already playing it. And if you are playing it, or you've just kind of like been away from it for a while, go check it out, because there's a lot of new stuff like this happening in it. And like I said, there is a clear roadmap of more DLC to come throughout the rest of the year, as we get through the rest of the 40th anniversary and everything to follow for the year to play out, into 2024. So, or rather till the end of 2024. So go and take a look at that if you haven't already. Some pretty cool stuff going on over in Spirits Unleashed by Ilphonic. Let's talk about licensed Ghostbusters merchandise news for a few moments, and we'll start off here with some toys and collectibles. Jada Toys has put out a die-cast Optimus Prime. I was going to call it Ecto 35 because that's what it used to be called, but that's a poor name for it because really it's just an Ecto 1 livery version of Optimus Prime that actually now celebrates the 40th anniversary. So arguably he could say that he's Ecto 40. But I don't really think that's the plan here. Ecto 35 was the name that they gave to the last version of Optimus Prime they did in a Ghostbusters colorway for the San Diego Comic-Con release of, I believe that was 2019, because it was the 35th anniversary. So this time around, Jada has released as part of their Hollywood Rides line a version of the cab of Optimus Prime. So this is without his trailer. It does not actually transform, but it is a die-cast car, but it's in the 1:24 scale and helps to celebrate the 40th anniversary of both Transformers and Ghostbusters, which are celebrating an anniversary together in the same year. You can take a look at this over at Target. They've got this in stock available online. So you can also find it over on Ghostbusters News. You may notice if you look at the story that the credit for the person who found that was yours truly. So not only are we reporting on the Ghostbusters News, but sometimes we're helping make it. But I digress. You can go take a look at this now. It is pretty cool if you're into Transformers and diecast cars and stuff. For me, I probably won't pick this up because I actually have the Ecto 35, so I don't really feel like I need another version of the cab of this. But if you're somebody who missed out on the Ecto 35 from SDCC and you want to get a piece of that sort of Optimus Prime representation with the Ecto livery on it, go take a look at this because it's pretty cool and it's pretty affordable. Another important piece of Ghostbusters collectibles that's coming out. We've talked already about the Hallmark keepsake ornament that's coming later on this year that's going to feature the sort of climactic moment in the 1984 Ghostbusters movie where the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is being blasted off the side of 55 Central Park West, aka Spook Central. That we now know that the name of that piece or that ornament is going to be called Roast 'Em, and that it will be out this July on July 13th. So this is something that you'll be able to get like before you go probably to San Diego Comic-Con. To be real, does that mean that maybe, just maybe, we might also get a pop-minded ornament that Hallmark might do? That's one of the San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con limited edition ornaments. Maybe, who knows? Given that they're going to let us buy this one as early as July for our Christmas trees in December. So if you want to celebrate Christmas in July with Ghostbusters, know that you'll be able to pick up Roast 'Em for the low price of $28.99. It will include a series of effects. It'll light up and it will play scenes, rather audio of scenes from the movie, along with the lights when you push the button. It's going to require 3 replaceable little watch batteries, and it's apparently measuring 3.2 by 4.07 by 1.68 inches in size. So, 3 inches by 4 inches if you're thinking about its size here. This is pretty cool. I got to be honest. Like, I'm a Hallmark nut and I really love keepsake ornaments, so I buy way too many of them and then can't fit them all on my tree. I have every version of the Ecto 1 that they've done, so I'm excited to see something totally new. And to be real, I think this is a pretty cool take. It's kind of a very different thing. I don't know that we've ever seen this depicted in any sort of statue or collectible before, of this scene of Stay Puft getting knocked off the building. So kind of unique, kind of different, and really exciting for the 40th anniversary. So take a look for that over at hallmark.com coming in July. And as Jason points out on Ghostbusters News, the page is live now on Hallmark if you go search for Ghostbusters. And if you bookmark the page, you won't have to worry about finding it later. So go take a look if you want. You can see all the great product images that are there. And I think you can maybe even get notified for when it goes live. Another big story Jason over at Ghostbusters News reported on is that Meijer grocery stores have turned up some new Ghostbusters merchandise. I always find this fascinating because we don't have Meijer grocery stores here in California, but they do exist in the Midwest. And apparently they sell more than groceries. They also sell apparel and t-shirts and socks and things. And so apparently the Circle City Ghostbusters reported to Ghostbusters News that they identified 2 new neon retro Ghostbusters t-shirts available for $12 at Meijer, as well as a pair of boxer briefs and a pair of Slimer socks available from a company called Swag. I'm going to be honest with you in telling you that these are way more interesting to me, not because I intend to wear boxer briefs that have the Ghostbusters logo all over them, but because these are 2 items that are typically only found in Australian regional markets. If you were to try and find them, even going to the swag website, you can buy the boxer briefs, but not the socks because they're usually available at Target Australia. So this is an opportunity to pick up two items that you may not have ever seen before in the domestic marketplace. Although I will tell you point blank that if you want to get the boxers, even if you don't live anywhere near a Meijer store, you can actually go on the web to the swag store. You'll find that over at swagboxers.com, and you can pick up that pair of boxer briefs for $15. So there's a little pro tip in case you don't live in Australia or you don't live near a Meijer. But there appears to be, again, more stuff coming out that may be stuff that you haven't seen before because the Ghostbusters 40th anniversary is happening. And so while we've all been chasing after Frozen Empire merchandise for a while, there's a really good chance we're going to see some more sort of generic Ghostbusters merchandise get a retail focus because there's a 40th anniversary to market. So it's kind of interesting to consider. Again, I don't know that I'm going to be wearing these boxer briefs, but if you're a boxer brief kind of person and you need some with Moogly all over them, Swag Boxers has you covered, and you might be able to find them down at Meijer. While you're there, you can also probably look for something else like Rice Krispie treats that we'll talk about in a few moments, but I digress. Let's talk about some licensed Halloween stuff for a few minutes, or at least some licensed cosplay stuff. Ghostbusters News reported this week on a variety of new stuff that's coming from Halloween Costumes and Fun.com, better known as under the favorite name that I prefer from their Instagram handle, Fun Costumes. Which, if you don't know that, they are at Fun Costumes on Instagram. They have revealed that they have a new Ghostbusters flight suit and proton pack combo they're going to be selling. That is sort of like their deluxe Ghostbusters flight suit. It has zippers and patches and has, pockets that open and everything the way you would expect a flight suit to. It's made of polyester, I believe. It's khaki, but is essentially designed to be something that is akin to an actual flight suit as opposed to just the Halloween costume. But what's more important in terms of this is that it's coming with an 80 to 85% size proton pack that is relatively accurate in terms of its design. It is not the Spirit Halloween proton pack, and it appears that it may not even light up. It may just be a static prop. This is kind of interesting given that we know that Halloween Costumes had released a full-size proton pack and attempted to market it with less than great success given its price and given the availability of other options from Spirit Halloween and the HasLab pack. But it's kind of interesting to consider that for about $200, you could pick up a sort of slightly scaled down proton pack shell and neutrona wand, as well as a flight suit for one order. If you're the kind of person who's not looking to be super screen accurate, but you just want to have a casual ability to go out to conventions and or Halloween costume events, etc. This is something that will exist for you. And what's kind of interesting to note is that there's a variation of this suit that's available. It's not going to be available yet, and there's no date on availability yet, but it's going to be a slime covered version of the suit. Now that's going to be offered individually for $79.99. It's not paired with the proton pack, although it does make me wonder if, those fine people over at Fun Costumes might not be able to figure out how to put those two things together on demand and give you whichever one you want. But that's something that's kind of interesting. It's the same quality jumpsuit, it appears, and has working zippers and pockets and the elastic waistband stuff the way you would expect a flight suit to. The difference here is that it has glow-in-the-dark printed slime all over it. So if you've ever wanted to be an Ecto-Glow version of, yourself, you can go and buy this from Fun Costumes for $79.99. Beyond the Ghostbusters costumes they've got, we've talked previously about the idea of a Garaka costume that they have shown off. More details are now available about that in terms of what it looks like up close, and you can go take a look at Ghostbusters News or the HalloweenCostumes.com website for more details on it. Possibly most important for most folks in terms of considering whether or not they want this is what its cost is going to be. It's slated to come in at about $100 at $99.99. Again, this is like a full body suit, almost like a mascot suit that goes all the way to the floor with a huge mask with giant horns on it. Very cool, I have to be honest. Like it's something that doesn't even necessarily read entirely just as Ghostbusters. It just reads as like sort of demonic. If you are the kind of person who's going to wear this out and want to sort of be like, I'm a low key casual Ghostbusters fan in a Halloween costume, like you could go out and just be like, yeah, I'm a demon. People wouldn't question what you were at all. But if you were around Ghostbusters fans, they would immediately know that you were Garaka. So you can take a look at this again over at HalloweenCostumes.com. And then a couple of different items they have that are Halloween decor. A while back, they teased this Slimer jack-o'-lantern pumpkin that was essentially like a plastic jack-o'-lantern that was a blow mold that was green and had Slimer's face sculpted into it. This time around, they're offering up a 12-inch Ghostbusters light-up Stay Puft pumpkin Halloween decoration that looks like two pumpkins stacked on top of each other, with the lower one decorated with Stay Puft's body and the upper one decorated with his head. I have to be honest with you in telling you that I swear to you this existed. I've seen this done with actual pumpkins in an image somewhere. That I don't know if HalloweenCostumes.com has seen the same image and decided, hey, we can make a plastic version of that lights up. But I swear I've seen this kind of exact same design of two pumpkins stacked on top of each other, where one is Stay Puft's head and the other is his belly. So kind of interesting that to see this in plastic form. I've always thought about trying to make that out of two pumpkins, but maybe I'll just buy this instead for the low cost of $19.99, and then I won't have to worry about it. And something I'm actually really excited about is that a while back, they had teased that they were going to be offering some Stay Puft themed porch light covers that would go directly over your, the lights that would be outside your door that are like sort of hanging on sconces outside your house. And I was like not exactly that jazzed about that, because I said, I don't really know that I need more Stay Puft themed decor or signage at Halloween. But now they've offered up that they're going to be putting out a Slimer version of this that looks like Slimer's head sort of floating, emerging out of your house. And the price on it is like $9.99. So I'm going to need like a full set of these for every lamp outside my house. And I may just need like a lot of them to replace me from being sun damaged, because I just kind of want them all the time. I think they're kind of awesome because they just kind of cover over a light bulb or cover over a light fixture and glow in the dark. Not like glow in the dark as in, they're painted that way, but I mean, they glow because they're illuminated from the light bulb behind them. So lots of cool options that are coming. Again, if you're worried about Ghostbusters not doing well, or if you think that for some reason it's not succeeding because of the box office earnings on Frozen Empire, rest assured that the folks over at Fun Costumes have doubled down for sure on how much more Ghostbusters stuff they intend to sell you. Including a Ghostbusters costume that's from Frozen Empire. So go ahead and take a look over at that. And don't forget that we've announced a few other things over the last couple weeks. They've got a red parka that's coming for Halloween, etc. So Ghostbusters fans should go take a look at HalloweenCostumes.com offerings for sure, because there's a ton of stuff coming out. Let's talk about edible things for a few minutes. Ghostbusters food merchandise. The big story for those of us in the United States is that for a while we've known, or at least thought, that there were going to be Rice Krispies treats that were Ghostbusters themed that had Slimer on the box and the mini puffs. And we've been walking around Walmarts and Kroger stores looking for them and turning up nothing. Well, the dry spell is now over and the Rice Krispie treats are here. They have been found in a variety of different stores across the Southeast and the Midwest, the United States over the last week, including shout out to Mood Slime Toaster on Instagram, who I believe found these in Kentucky. I believe that these were also found by That Miami Ghostbuster in Florida, who turned them off at a Walmart store. I believe that they were found at a Kroger store. So these are hitting different grocery stores at this point. I have not identified them here on the West Coast yet, but I'll be honest with you. When we did Ghostbusters cereal back in 2020 or 2021, whenever we were doing that, we were like the last market to get it. I'm convinced that cereal moves East Coast to West Coast for some reason. I don't really know if that's true, but we'll see where it's going to turn up when it arrives in the West Coast. I've been looking in Walmart neighborhood market stores out here because that's who ended up with the cereal and the marshmallows first, as opposed to traditional Walmart stores out on the West Coast. But Walmart neighborhood markets are not really as widespread in other marketplaces. So if you're not sure what that is, it's a grocery store that is Walmart branded. So keep your eyes open, because those Rice Krispies treats may be snap, crackling, and popping their way into your grocery store sometime soon. And if you do find them anywhere here in California, let me know, because I would really like to get at least one box of them. If not just because, they're got a cool box and they have mini puffs on them, they're Rice Krispies treats. You really can't go wrong. Beyond that, if you live in Italy, apparently you have like the most food tie-ins ever. We've already talked about the idea that Yummers has a brand of frozen pizzas that they are putting out for the celebration of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire and the Ghostbusters 40th anniversary. Now they've announced they also have cotton candy that is coming out. There is a traditional classic flavoring as well as a cotton candy flavored an ectoplasmic apple that is also green that celebrates Slimer. So if you live in Italy right now, I don't even know if you're listening to this podcast because I don't speak Italian, but maybe you are. And if you are, go get yourself some Yummers cotton candy because it looks awesome. And I'm totally disappointed that I can't get it here in the United States. And apparently there is a pizza chain in Italy called Rosso Pomodoro that has offered up a ghost pizza. Now, what I find really amusing about this is a pizza that is supposed to ape the visual aesthetic of Slimer. And as a result, it is a pizza that is covered in pistachio cream, chopped pistachios, Jerusalem artichokes, basil, mozzarella, and ham. But the way it looks is like almost as if you're looking at a pizza that is covered in Slimer slime and then has a bunch of like ham composed tongues that they're kind of leaping out of the pizza at you. It's kind of weird. It's also kind of awesome. It's not a thing I would eat because I don't eat ham, but I do like pizza. You all know this, and I think this is pretty impressive. So if you live in Italy, go get yourself a ghost pizza. Let me know how it is. Somebody let GB Max know that I need a report on how ghost pizza is in Italy because I don't know. I need this. I need a debrief on this. It sounds amazing. Let's talk for a few minutes, though, getting out of food merchandise into a couple of unofficial merchandise news items to round out our headlines and sort of merch discussion this week. I want to remind you that you're about a week away from the closing of the Kurt Fuller and Harris Yulin signings that are being offered by TCU Collectibles, aka The Containment Unit, that you may better know as Matt Sanders and Tom Henry. If you want to get in on those, your time is running out as they both close on the 26th. So you're just about a week away from that. If you want to get autographs from either Harris Yulin, who was of course the judge in Ghostbusters 2, or Kurt Fuller, who played Jack Hardemeyer in Ghostbusters 2, you will want to reach out to slimedsignatures@gmail.com. If you want to take a look at photo options that are available and details on signings, go to TCU Collectibles on Facebook. You can find the post directly at the top of the page. It's pinned for both of those signings. So I guess that's two things that are pinned rather than one. So they are pinned. Go take a look at them. And, something else is kind of fun. This is somebody who I was not really familiar with until this week when Jason Fitzsimmons from Ghostbusters News reported on this. There is apparently a maker of toys called Firestar Toys who has sort of picked up the mantle of other folks who've been doing things that are similar and has released a series of minifigures for, Lego toys. And in this case, they have two figures that I think are really great. One that I really think I may need to get because I don't have this for my firehouse at all. The Destructive Deity is essentially a ghost that looks a lot like a certain, terrorizing destructor who arrives in a 1984 movie and who comes with a traveler's guide to New York City that is apparently the giant Slore edition, which is just like the funniest thing ever. That particular ghost, that particular deity would show up with a traveler's guide. So really cute, looks a lot like, a Lego version of our favorite terrorizing flat top ghost. And there's a version of a particular character who's called the Brickless Bureaucrat. And I don't know if this has ever been done before, that somebody has made their own variation on Walter Peck. He comes with a briefcase as well as a Spook Central subway sign, which is kind of fun. There's a bunch of different accessories that you could also get from Firestar Toys if you're a Lego fan, including detailed deluxe proton packs that appear to be 3D printed, as well as some other things like a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man billboard, some Ray's Occult bookstore paraphernalia, and quite possibly like the funniest thing out of all this is an accessory Tobin Spirit Guide, which I'm like, I need that for my firehouse for sure. Like, how do I not have a Tobin Spirit Guide inside my Lego firehouse? That's obviously a thing that every ghostbusting scenario needs. So if you want to take a look at these, because they're pretty cool, head over to firestartoys.com and, sort of take a look at what they have available in terms of Ghostbusters items. And the thing I want to leave you with this week in terms of things to take a look at and things to be aware of, this is my part of the show where I try to tell you about something entertaining or interesting to go take a look at. If you didn't see Tuesday night's episode of Jimmy Kimmel's show on ABC, you should go at least watch the monologue on YouTube, because you may find that in the final moments of the monologue, Nick Offerman appears as a ghost. and then is summarily busted by Jimmy Kimmel's sidekick, Guillermo. And if you watch that clip and you ask yourself, I wonder where they got a proton pack from that looks so screen accurate, the answer would be our friends at the LA Ghostbusters, who apparently got to visit the set and have a proton pack, a trap, and a PKE meter used in a late night television sketch, unlocking a brand new achievement for the LA Ghostbusters. So shout out to them, and go take a look at that clip because it's kind of amusing and fun. Okay. So that about wraps up our headlines for this week. So let's go now to this awesome conversation that I'm so excited to share with you with Kevin Mangold, who you may better know as Ghostbusters Frozen Empire's Slimer. Joining me on Extraplasm Podcast, all the way from under a pile of snack food wrappers in a firehouse attic in New York City, is an actor, producer, former horse racing jockey, and current multi-hyphenate. Kevin Mangold is with us on the show. Kevin, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Jim.
Thank you for coming on the show. It's fantastic to have you on. It was fantastic to meet you at the We Can Be Heroes, release event that was happening for Ghostbusters Back in Town, where you were present signing. And I'm still kind of shocked that I walked up to you and you said, I was listening to your episode. As I came up to you.
I was actually in the car on the way up there. I was listening, and then I listened to the other half on the way home. So
that's amazing.
I listen to it. I listen to it mostly when I'm running. So, but I listen to it. I'll be listening, coming up as well. I'll be listening to all of your podcasts now.
Well, now don't create any pressure, because that means that from now on, I know that if I do anything wrong, there's a potentiality that I can be slimed. You have certainly the expertise to execute on that.
Yeah. Well, you have to be entertaining for sure.
Yeah. If I'm not, there's going to be consequences. You may move into the house and bring a pile of snack food with you. I presume that you're no longer really sleeping under a pile of snack foods. That was just a temporary arrangement.
As much as possible. I can't wait to do it again. So
I'm so excited that you are here with us and that you had the opportunity to reprise like one of the most beloved characters in Ghostbusters. Like I kind of said this a long time ago. I met Robin Shelby, who of course was at that event, at We Can Be Heroes as well. And when I met Robin Shelby, like probably back in 2019, I said this comment to her that as much as, we all love Dan Aykroyd and we all love Ray Stantz and we all love Bill Murray and Venkman, they never put them necessarily on the side of a juice box, right? That Slimer is like an iconic character who, to me, extends like outside of just like, if you love Ghostbusters, you love all the characters. Like Slimer became an icon for kids and an entire generation of kids who he was on everything from, Ecto Cooler to cereal to cartoons to, of course, like the original representation of the character. And so I think it's amazing that after 40 years, you got to bring back that original OG representation of Slimer. What was your feeling on that? Like I want to get into it with you in terms of like the audition process and sort of how it went, but like, what was your feeling on finding out that you were going to be performing the role of Slimer, but sort of like this old school representation of him and sort of bringing back the classic OG version of him?
Well, it took a long time before I found that out. I was going into Ariane Tutin's shop and being measured and photographed and getting movement training months before I ever had any idea what I was playing.
Gotcha.
And so when I did find out, it was really sort of shocking because, like you said, Slimer is iconic. And they did kind of slowly lead me up to, this is a big role. I've done lots and lots of creatures from, little, dogs to spiders and, lots of different creatures. So, I've worked with the shop who recommended me. I've worked with them many times. And so I just thought, okay, I'm going in for a spider or something, just the usual thing that I usually do. And so I wasn't really, so they started kind of prepping me like, this is a big one. And it's shooting in England. So you got to start getting your passport and stuff ready. And so it's like, oh, wow. And so I started thinking like, what could this be? And, I just couldn't figure it out. Couldn't really, I didn't want to make guesses at what it was or anything. I had some, but eventually after, like I said, months of going back and forth into the shop, they finally said, yeah, you're going to be playing Slimer. And then they had the mold at that point. It was still just the mold. They hadn't made the actual suit yet.
Right.
And then I saw that it was like, oh my God, I'm standing right here in front of Slimer. Like that is Slimer right there. and really I'd say the first time that it really hit me, like it was just kind of shocking. And it is still a little bit, was after I was in the suit and we shot, you might've seen some photos of me down on the table. I was squashed down.
Yeah.
I think that photo has come out recently. We did some test footage the first day that I was in, like kind of the unpainted test mold. And what we did is we put two tables together and left a large crack in the middle that I could come up in between and I could lower down. So I had, some height, but the suit would stop on the top of the table.
Right.
So I was able to go up and down, And then we introduced a bunch of food and we had cereal boxes and I was just throwing food in and dumping food down. And I was just, and the other two Slimers came in. And of course, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was there. So, Ariane invited Robin and Mark Brian Wilson and Billy Bryan invited all of them in. And so I was able to get movement tips and pointers and stuff from them as I was doing it. And so the first time that it really fully hit me, like this is Slimer, is when I came around and looked at the camera, at what they had just shot. I was doing all of the playing and stuff, but it wasn't really until I was able to go around and look at whatever, because they were all laughing and jumping. And
right.
And when I was able to go around back and look at the monitor and see it, I was just sort of like, well, holy shit, that's Slimer right there. Like that, like that's Slimer. Wow. And it wasn't really, because to look at the suit isn't the same, but when you see him at, the whole, the jaw and, it's like, wow, that's Slimer right there. They see the jiggles and the butt and it's like, holy crap. So
it's kind of funny too, because like the way you're describing this, I think this very differently in terms of puppet work. Like puppet work is far more like you're actively watching on the monitor as you perform, right? And like for you still are to some extent, like you're essentially puppeting an entire suit from inside of it, but you don't have the benefit of like being able to watch that performance on a monitor as you do it, the same way that say like puppeteers, like for, Jim Henson, for instance, they're like watching every movement and they're looking at a camera on the floor or a monitor on the floor as they're doing all the different movements. I have to imagine like for that first time you see it, you're like, oh, this is actually what it's going to look like when I create these movements, Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring that up because right now the whole question of puppeteer has become a big thing. And I think in the puppetry world, and it actually, I don't even know. I just heard this morning from my agent that the puppeteer parenthesis on my credit was not supposed to have been there. And that goes for myself as well as Ian White, because if you're inside a suit, that's not a puppet. That's an actor. In the same way that Lon Chaney, was not a puppet.
Right.
And, no disrespect to puppeteers. Obviously, I puppeteered The Witch. I've puppeteered a lot of things. I've puppeteered spiders and, like I said, all kinds of things. And the library ghost, I got to puppeteer part of the library ghost in this movie.
Oh, I did not know that.
I was a left arm. So I'm not against puppeteer. I'm not saying anything about puppeteers, but as far as Slimer goes, I haven't ever thought of myself as a puppeteer in that regard. And I've played a lot of creature suits and I have 3 that came out in the same week this year and none of my credits on those said puppeteer. And so, I was kind of shocked to see that it said puppeteer. And I thought maybe they're going to put me as a puppeteer down at the end, because of, the puppeteer work that I did. But as far as the cast members go, I know that, I played Slimer. It's just Kevin Slimer, So my view on it, and I think I say it's a thing right now because I think even the puppeteer community there isn't really a definition of what is a puppet and what isn't a puppet.
Sure.
So I think if my view of it, if you're inside, then you're just a creature performer and that's an actor with makeup,
Right.
If you're on the outside and there are rods and strings or anything from the outside, then to me that seems to be a puppet. And I guess maybe we just need a definition. Maybe somebody needs like SAG needs to come up with something to say, this is a puppet and this is not a puppet,
Right.
But I know in my situation, this was the first time I've ever seen puppeteer put on, on a creature suit. And I know that it's being fixed or corrected for the
Right.
the DVD and all of that stuff. So
It is interesting though, because when you think about it, like, the way that the entire art form of puppet performance has changed because of digital puppetry and stuff, right? You're right when you say, like, how do you define what it is? And I would agree with you, like, that I don't look at you putting on the suit and performing inside the suit as, oh, you were doing puppet work. Like, you're doing full blown performer work in that suit, and that it's amazing.
But there were puppeteers who worked on it.
Sure.
Worked the eyes, and so puppeteers certainly worked on it. I just think the person on the inside maybe isn't a puppeteer.
Yeah. Like, and there's a level of performance that's different from just, kind of moving around elements of it. Along those lines of, like, who's moving other elements, like, what are you fundamentally, like, inside the suit? You're moving your arms, you're doing all the physical body movement, but are you working armature for expressions and things, or is that part of, like, a team effort to bring the character to life?
Well, the jaw would open and close by my raising my head, but I also had a rod inside that attached to the lower jaw that would kind of go into my belly. And so if I would, like, do crunches, I could open and close the mouth. And so I controlled the opening and closing of the mouth. Mm-hmm. Obviously my arms were my arms, my hands, my fingers were all my hands.
Right.
And I could, control the head and the whole body and everything. What I didn't control was the eyebrows.
Okay.
And the eyeballs, the way they, which direction they looked, and the twitch of the nose also. So there were 3 things that were servo controlled.
Gotcha.
And that was Bill Sturgeon, by the way, who did that.
Awesome.
And but everything else, was me. And so it was kind of, it was a team effort.
Yeah. No, it's like, I wondered about it because as I was watching your performance, and I've seen the movie now like 5 times. And so I've gotten to the point where I'm like trying to look at and go, okay, which parts of this were, the practical effects of the movement of the puppet versus which parts of this might've been touched up in CG stuff. And I just started to wonder, like, how many people were actually, sort of making all of that movement happen in the practical level.
The only thing that I think might be CG, and I'm not even sure of this, is we're spoiling, right, at this point?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We've both seen it 5 times.
Yeah.
If anybody's listening to the podcast at this point, who hasn't seen the movie, like, you failed.
At the very end, when Slimer comes out of the firehouse, when he flies out over the top of that. We did actually shoot stuff with me on a harness, and I was swinging. And so that very well might also be practical. But I also know that they scanned me and took tons of photos from every angle. And so
gotcha.
that could be CG, but every other instance of Slimer appearing in the movie is practical. And I remember every, moment, from the pizza to the, coming out of the pile and eating the Cheetos, every bit of that floating right there, I was on a harness lifted up. And so I was on the stage, with Finn, and all of that was practical. And I think that's maybe the only difference, or the big difference between the original Slimer, is that he wasn't actually on the set with the actors acting. And it's had a lot to do with size. He is a much bigger guy, and which is specifically why they came to, I'm 5 feet tall. So it's why they came to a jockey sized guy. I had to be able to be the right size to fit in with Finn and the other actors. So
can you tell me a bit about that? Like, how did you end up coming onto the project? Like, I know your background before, you've been a performer, you've been an actor for many years. You were an actor, you kind of went into being, doing horse racing for a while. Then you came back as a result of working on Seabiscuit, right?
Yeah.
And so how did you end up in this position to sort of get asked to work on a Ghostbusters movie?
So I played the giant spider in a Damon Wayans movie called The Curse of Bridge Hollow. And the person who made that giant spider, and I was like inside, operating it. And the person who created that spider and who hired me for that job, called and asked me, "Hey, are you interested? Are you available to work?" And I said, yeah. And he said, "Okay, can you go in and talk to this guy?" And that guy happened to be Arjen Tooten. And I'm happy to say I haven't auditioned for a role or for a part in Well, I shouldn't say I haven't auditioned. I do commercials and stuff where I audition.
Right.
But as far as a creature suit, for like creatures, I haven't really had to audition or haven't been asked to audition in many years. I pretty much just get called up and hey, are you available? And would you play this role? And I either, do or I don't. And this was one of those cases where I was asked, hey, are you available? And are you willing, to leave the country? And are you interested? And without knowing what you're playing yet, are you interested? And I'm like, of course, I'm interested. Obviously, until the contract is signed, there's never any kind of, agreements on any side. Yeah, I don't have to do anything, but yeah, of course, I'm interested. And are you interested? And let's figure it out. And so, yeah, so after many months, they finally let me know what it was. And then, I guess I went to England and shot the whole thing. And I've really sort of been just as shocked as you are about it. I've thought of it as it's one of those stories of like, like all of a sudden the band, you're eating at McDonald's and your favorite band, AC/DC's eating there and they need a drummer and like, hey, you come be my drummer. I'm like, no way, I'm the drummer for AC/DC. It's like that. It's like, what? And then I wake up in the morning still today. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm the drummer of AC/DC. What
So, to be fair, like that, you come at this as a fan of Ghostbusters then, right? What is your relationship with Ghostbusters prior to coming onto the film?
Well, it's hard to be as big a fan as, some of the big fans I've seen now after working on it. I was in high school when in 1984 when it came out and
yeah,
I loved it. I was a huge fan of the movie then. And, I've always loved the original and, I've watched all of the others and I've enjoyed them all and everything, but I am not a fan type. Like I don't really watch movies generally more than once and I don't really collect stuff. And I do have a bunch of Slimer stuff I've collected now. But, so I guess I just say all that to say I'm like not really the fan type, to get like, oh, I love this movie and I'm going to get behind it. Having said that, I have really just been shocked, stunned in a way by the fandom and by how powerful and how important Ghostbusters, all of it, the whole storyline, the characters, how it is to people and it's changed people's lives more than any other movie I've seen. How it's, like there are fans of Spider-Man and fans of, Superman in every movie and every genre. There are, Freddy and Jason, there's lots of fans of every movie. But the Ghostbuster fans are unique in a couple things, I find, in that if you want to hear my opinion on it.
Oh, of course.
I'm new to, I would say I'm green, to the whole Ghostbuster fandom thing. And I'm really just seeing what I'm seeing, in particular for Ghostbuster fans compared to other fans. And I've been doing horror movies for a lot of years and I've had, fans approach and stuff, is the camaraderie and the, like working togetherness that is the Ghostbuster groups that I don't see in the others. It's a lot of, competition and maybe maybe fighting. It's like war stuff outside, but the Ghostbusters are really much more about working together. And I find that interesting. And then beyond just the cosplay part of like, they're always in character. The good stuff that they do, I notice it's not just out there like playing for their own egos. It's for charity and they're doing things, and so the whole Ghostbuster world has been like so crazy to me in such a great way that it's really fascinating and exciting to be a part of.
It is kind of funny. Like, I've told this story before, but Danielle Kennedy worked on Afterlife as she was Roller Granny. And she has a very, short performance in the movie where essentially, she says, dirt farmer had a family. And then at one other point she says the word nope. And her performance became something that like, as a community, we memed. It was like, that was poof, we memed it. And I ended up connecting with her via email and we kind of had this exchange where I kind of said, hey, welcome to the community forever now. Even though you have this part that's not necessarily huge, you're now part of like a set of character actors and folks who we will just identify with you forever now. That's the deal. That's just kind of how it is. And I hope that's okay with you because we're a bunch of wackos who love everybody who worked on every aspect of these movies and sort of chase after all those autographs and all those things. So I imagine that coming into it, like not having experienced that before, it has to be somewhat new. Like, wow, this is like a sudden surge of like interest and very intense interest and a lot of sort of, as you said, camaraderie and activity of people who want to work together and collaborate on things.
Well, that's almost word for word what Arjen said to me. Once he told me who I was playing, he said, you are now in this Ghostbuster world and forever you're going to be going to conventions and you're going to be signing autographs. And I was just like, really? That's, I've racing horses. I've signed autographs and I was on Broadway in Peter Pan. I signed autographs and, I've little bits here and there. I've had my Seabiscuit. I had my, at the premiere, sign autographs, waves, right? You're
right.
like, oh, I'm doing great for this month. And then people, forget about you. So it's not that I haven't signed autographs, but this is different in that I'm, this is kind of a forever thing. Like now you're forever Slimer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you've joined a sort of a family of folks who have all helped to produce this movie and to produce them over 40 years. And like, to me, that was the fun part of being at We Can Be Heroes, was that it was this, I was like, wow, we're literally in a multi-generational room of slime. Like this is straight up like you're here, Mark Brian Wilson's here, Robin's here. Like, and so you've got all three performers who have ever been inside a version of that suit. And they're all a little different in the sense that, I think the Ghostbusters 2 Slimer is quite different from how the Slimer who's from 84 and the Slimer you're portraying look and feel, I think, to an audience. But, along the way, it's like all three of those folks, all three of you have become people who are iconically, associated with the franchise, and you're at the beginning of that journey. And hopefully like you didn't hear that. And Arjen was like, from now on, you have to go sign autographs. You have to just like, no, I'm not. That's it. We're not. Like, I refuse.
Right. No, I've tried to be, I'm obviously I'm into it. I'm, as much as I can, I'd like to be out there. And, I felt the same way when I was there, being with all of the past Slimers and, being with Billy Bryan, being with everybody together.
Yeah.
Like I told you, I had already met them previously once, at the shop. And of course, Billy Bryan, he worked quite a bit during the fabrication. He worked on the under, like, the padding and all of that stuff.
Gotcha.
So he worked on the suit. So I got to see him quite a bit, working on the suit. But Robin Shelby, she came in a few times. And so, I got to see her. And then Mark Brian Wilson, he came in the first time when they all came in together and we all took pictures, group photos, which you may have seen online. And so I had met them, but at the comic book thing last week, I felt the same way. I was I felt a little out of place. I was kind of sitting off there going, wow, look at all that history sitting right there. And sometimes I kind of just see it as like from the outside, you know what I mean? Like I'm kind of just viewing it,
right.
Like, wow, look at all the people in this room. And then I have to go, oh, no, I'm actually one of them. Look at that.
Right.
I'm sitting right here in the group. And so it's a little weird, honestly, it's still a little weird for me.
But I mean, I think it's one of those things of transition. I think it's really cool for you that you have sort of entered into this sort of new phase, of fandom, that's attached to your career, that you get to carry a character forward, at this point, which is very cool. I mean, it's a big responsibility, I think, in some ways. And I appreciate that you have been so engaging to folks who are want to come forward and say, hey, can I talk to you about this? Like, you've been super cool and super awesome and open to so many people. And I really appreciate it. I did want to ask you a bit about, like, I think we've talked about to some extent some of the things that are exciting for you. What was the most exciting part of this for you, though? If you had to identify like one thing that was most exciting about portraying Slimer or taking this role, like, and you could just be like, I got to eat really good scones and drink tea in England. But what was the most exciting part of this for you?
Undoubtedly the being up in the attic, with Finn, acting right there in the scene, doing the whole Trevor scene, that, I did a lot of blue screen stuff, but the stuff that I did right there, eating the Cheetos, blasting up out of the pile, watching the slime get, squirted all over him. I was there for that whole thing when he comes up out of the trap, I'm going to shoot you in the face, to be able to sit there and just watch that whole thing. That was, for me, that was it. That was, and, Kamal Nanjiani was shooting literally right, the stage right next, to have him, he came running up to me. Oh my God, Slimer. There were a few days in there when I was up in the attic that were the best, that I won't forget ever.
That's kind of funny you said this, because one of the things I've been thinking about with respect to your performance and that scene in particular is that it's really the first time that we've ever seen somebody get slimed. Like, we've heard people get slimed, and the 84 movie is very much like a cheat, right? It's sort of, we get Venkman screaming, we get Slimer sort of flying, and then we get Venkman on the floor covered in slime. Yeah. But we've never actually seen that depicted before. And I know that there was a rig that they developed, the sort of like shot slime out of two sides of Finn Wolfhard. But I mean, for you, what went into creating what was essentially the first time we ever see Slimer actually slime somebody? Like, what was involved in that?
Well, I think of myself as an actor first. So I tried putting myself as much into who I think Slimer is, as much as you can find the mindset of a ghost. And, Ghost was a person at one time, and there's, as you know, in all of the movies, including Frozen Empire, all of the ghosts have different personalities and different mindsets, and so I had to try to find that for Slimer. And, there's been a lot of discussion about who Slimer was as a person, never in the movies. And so there isn't anything that really we can grab on, like, oh, he was that king, or he was a gangster, or any of the stories that we've heard. And frankly, I wasn't given any direction as to who he was as an actor. I have to know that. I have to know what I'm thinking and all of that. So I don't know if I'm going into too much detail, but
no.
I saw a post, there was a photo, the very first one I ever saw of Slimer in the pile. Someone said, "Oh, he looks so sad." And I took a picture. Somebody's comment was, "He looks so sad." And I snapped, a screenshot of that and sent it to Aryan right away. Like, look at this, because that just like hit me, like that. I loved that, because no, he's not. I mean, he wasn't sad when he came up out of the pile and he's chasing Trevor. He's not sad. Right. But, for one thing, slime is emotions. I mean, that's what it is. The slime is that's what ectoplasm is, right? It's the emotions left over. And so to me, I think Slimer has more slime than any of the other ghosts because he has more emotions. And there's a lot that goes into that. And for one thing, I think he's lonely. I think he doesn't want to be alone up there anymore. I think he doesn't want to, be under a pile of trash. And so all of that was in my head when I was just popping up out, because I'm trying to, I'm Slimer. I'm becoming him, So, I think you see in the movie, he doesn't mean any harm. He doesn't want to hurt anybody. And I think that being a gangster or a king doesn't lead a ghost to become someone who is caring in that way, or even is so shy that he's just going to hide away instead of go out and be a protagonist ghost, And so none of those previous live stories worked for me. And so I feel like I had to become Slimer in a way. And so, all of that is what went into me sliming him. And so, I wasn't, when I say Slimer was, when he came out of the hole, he's not wanting to kill Trevor. He's not trying to cause any harm to Trevor. I think there are a lot of things in Slimer's head at that moment about, I want to be left alone, but at the same time, I don't want to be left alone. And I think Slimer is a complicated character. And it's funny saying that, because he's just a throwaway ghost in a lot of comic books and stuff. He's just like, but Slimer is a complicated character, I think, in my head anyway. He's, I think the relationship that is between he and Trevor is, although not expanded in the script, I think is right on par with the Melody and Phoebe storyline.
Yeah. I think that's really fun. That I love that you have this much going on in terms of the character development and the performance. Like, literally, as you're saying, I don't know if this is too detailed. Like, the next question I was going to ask you is, do you have a headcanon for what Slimer's background is and where he's coming from? Because, we don't know. Like, it's never been a thing that we've ever had introduced to us and explained to us as to what he is. And there's like the, he's allegedly the ghost of John Belushi. And that's why he's eats as much as he does. And so all these different takes on what he potentially could be. But, you know,
I don't think that's ever really. I don't think that's I mean, I've heard that, you know, I mean, obviously his movements, and I did watch John Belushi, and I think so. I mean, I don't want to speak for the others, but I did watch John Belushi movement, and I watched obviously a lot of the 1984, you know, Slimer shots to make sure that I was moving the same. But I also got a lot of my movements from John Belushi and watching John Belushi movements, you know, the jello down the face and all of that stuff.
Sure.
You know, I'm a zit and all of that stuff. So, but I don't think in terms of Slimer being John Belushi's, I think his movements were modeled after, and his personality was modeled after, but I've never heard, I mean, I could totally be wrong, but I've never heard that John Belushi, that Slimer was John Belushi after he had died. You know,
I don't think, ghost. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily like a canon utterance as much as it's a thing that gets tossed around by fans.
Yeah,
you know,
because I have read that he was like a gangster or that he was a king in his past life. So, but but like I said, I don't think either of them. I mean, the John Belushi one would fit, but I don't think the gangster or the king one would, because a king or a gangster wouldn't find themselves hiding out in an attic. You know, they would be more proactive about, and I don't think they would be. You know, for a lot of reasons, I don't think that's who Slimer is.
And I think that like what I get out of the performance that you have in the film, when you come out of that pile of trash and you have that conflict, you know, with Trevor as you're performing Slimer, what I get is not anger and not hostility as much as it is almost fear. It's like two teenagers who have gotten caught doing something they shouldn't have been doing, who run away from each other, is almost the vibe. And it's kind of like when you get to the end of the movie, when Trevor sees Slimer pop up, his expression is not fear. It is, I know that guy, you know, and I like this idea that you've kind of thrown in there that, you know, the relationship that Trevor and Slimer have almost runs somewhat parallel to the one that Phoebe and Melody have, despite the fact that it's a different relationship, but it is also one of like, they're two people he's chasing after him and hunting him at first. By the end of the movie, the Slimer is essentially saving the day to some extent. You know, so I think that's kind of cool that you have that level though of like sort of emotional investment in what his motivation is, right? It's not just, oh, he's got to get up, he's got to get from point A to point B because this is what's on the script, but that you're thinking about what would motivate this ghost in this moment? Like, what is he actually up to? You know, and I like that idea that because I mean, I guess it's a good question, and I'll ask you this as somebody who's performed him. From your understanding, why is he still at the firehouse? He's never left since Ghostbusters 2.
Well, that's, you know, that again, that's one of the things that leads me to believe that he's not somebody on the par of a king or a gangster, because they would take those steps into their own hands. You know, I don't know how much I should reveal, because I don't know if they would want me to be upset. I do obviously have all of these stories in my head, but I would say that there's a certain type of, you know, it's emotional because, you know, I've thought a lot about this character, and it's heavy. You know, I think a person or a character who would choose to hide out in, you know, solace, just being alone rather than attempting to reach out. There's a lot in that. I think, like, let's just say, like, if it were someone who was a child, for example, they wouldn't have the courage or the mindset of a child. Someone with Down syndrome, for example, who maybe doesn't have the courage to step out. And instead they just stay there waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting,
right,
for something to change. And that to me is a much deeper personality, you know, that, yeah, they really want to be out there. It's like, you know, I think it's something that everybody can associate with. Like, I would really love to go to that party with everybody tonight, but I can't possibly get myself to do that. I don't do that, you know, and there are a lot of people in that position who would love to do something, but just can't get themselves to do it because they don't have, you know, the inner strength, maybe, or for so many reasons. I mean, it could be, I mean, even the physical strength, or it could be, you know, any number of reasons. But for me, I thought of it as you know, not for a lack of wanting. He's there. He's there because he doesn't have any options.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like it really adds some sort of depth to sort of understanding what his motivations are, other than, well, he's the Ghostbusters pet in the cartoon, so he's just kind of there, you know, like yeah.
And he likes to eat, you know.
Yeah, and he apparently found a really good source of snack food nearby that he's been hoarding. He apparently likes Airheads. That was one of my most surprising things about Slimer was that he likes taffy. Apparently, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. In fact, I have a couple of those here at home. I brought some of the trash home with me. So I got a couple Airheads here.
You've got a cross section of Slimer's favorite snacks that you can never be without.
I do. Yeah.
See, if you start doing conventions, that's what you need to have on the table. You're like, these are officially Slimer sanctioned Airheads. They're
yeah. I'm actually doing one at the end of this month in North Dakota. Yeah.
Oh, right on. Where are you going to?
Yeah. Minot, North Dakota. It's called a MagicCon.
Oh, cool. Right on. If you're listening and you're in North Dakota, then go say hi to Kevin.
Yeah.
For sure.
26th, 27th, and 28th.
Nice. That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about, like, what does a shoot day for you look like as Slimer? Like, what is that? Like, how does a day begin for you? How does the day end? Like, what is a day as Slimer like?
Man, I had so much fun. I mean, thanks for the question, because to go back to that is really wonderful. I had so much fun. We were in Reading, which is just right outside of London in the UK. And, I had never been to London before. And so I got to go twice this time. I went to London and then to New York and then back to London. So they flew me to London twice and then to New York in between. And, man, I just had so much fun. So I'll tell you, my day started with, first thing, I would get up early and I'd go running. I did that every morning. I'd go running around Reading and all the like historical buildings and stuff. And then I would go to this, place called Munchies. That was the most American breakfast that I could find, because food in England is wacky, to say the least. So, but I found a place that served like eggs that were not made with water and stuff. So they actually were like American food.
Things that are not poached.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll never understand it. I'll never understand how they make scrambled eggs. It's the weirdest thing. So after I would eat, I would go back to the hotel, and then I would get picked up. There was a driver that would pick me up and take me to the studio. And then, so I would mostly sit around for hours until they got to my shot. They were lighting it and getting everything just right and painting everything just so. But then when I'd get called up onto set, and usually once I was in Slimer, I would stay in, as long as I could. I mostly like to do that just as far as staying in character and stuff, but it's also fun to play with the people on set and stuff. Sure. So I do that too. I'm a little bit mischievous as Slimer. Probably made a couple people mad. I think I made Jason upset a few times, running around, climbing up on the camera and stuff. So, but I did kind of incorporate his mischievous personality a little bit. But for the most part, when we're not rolling, when I'm on set and the lights are on, I just kind of go into like a meditative mode, and I sort of just shut down, and I get my head thinking all about who the character is and what he's doing that day and what he did before this, what he wants to do after this, all the things that any person with a brain would think in any moment. Yeah. And then I just sit there and wait until they tell me to roll, and then I do it. And I guess I just sit there all day until we're done, the most fun I had obviously was afterward, and then when I'm done, I get out the suit and we all go back out around London, go eat together. And that was all just so much fun to go out and eat with all the puppeteers and with Arjen. And, I got to meet everybody, got to have dinner with, lots of the actors, and right. Everybody was very friendly. And, Kamal Nanjiani was so great. He was, there was one day when I was walking all around his set. They were like right next to each other, and our dressing rooms were kind of in between the two. And so he was watching the monitor of us, of the Trevor scene of Finn and I shooting our stuff, where I run up to him and then I went around him and then ran away from him, and then they're gonna make me go through him. So they watched him film all that stuff, and I guess Kamal was down on his apartment set. They were getting ready to shoot that next scene. You know, when they come to the apartment, and it's like, do you think you could fit into a size 8? That one they were shooting.
I love that line. I don't know why. It's just, the way he says it is so good.
Me too. Every line he delivers, he just killed it, man. He's killed it. I love it when he goes 60. That was brilliant. Anyway, so he was on the set getting ready to film his stuff, and he saw the monitor and he saw Slimer. And so he comes running over and like, oh my God, Slimer, I had to come see Slimer. And it's just really funny because, you know, I know it's not me, obviously, it's Slimer. You know, it's like everybody loves Slimer. Nobody knows me at all. But when they see Slimer standing there, it's like, oh my God, it's Slimer. And he came running over. And it's just weird, like Kamal and Johnny saying, I can't believe I'm meeting Slimer. I've always wanted to meet Slimer. Like, well, that's weird because here I am meeting Kamal and Johnny. So
that's so.
And it was
fun.
like that with everybody. It was like that with all of the actors. You know, everybody was really awesome. You know, Paul Rudd was just the most down to earth, normal, you know, just like person you would meet at a bar. You know, and everybody was very friendly.
That's great.
Eric Reich from, you know, like everybody really was so inviting, and I feel like I was just totally invited into a family by all the actors and producers and everyone. You know?
That's amazing. I mean, I think that's so fantastic. I mean, it's really evident that there was a strong sense of camaraderie around the set. You know, I think that that's pretty clear from looking at how, like you talked about the mischievous photos. And I was thinking about this, that 40 years on, we occasionally get, you know, a candid that, you know, was Mark inside the suit from the 84 movie. And we're all like, oh my God, look at that. And there's so few of them that, you know, the folks who have collected 8x10s and had him sign them over the years can say, oh, that's one of 5 or 6 of them where he was sort of behind the scenes doing something funny. And now in like the age of like cell phones, it was so funny to me to sort of watch the movie come out, NDAs expire, etc. And there's all these photos of you doing all this random stuff around the set or on the blue screen where you're just hanging out and you're in the suit, you know, and it's just, there's so many more opportunities, I think, for us to see more of those behind the scenes moments than we did before. But it's so evident from them that like you all were having so much fun. Like that
for sure. And I'm right in there with you. I'm excited to see all of those photos too. You know, they keep popping up. Somebody will post a photo that I've never seen before, and I'm like, oh my God, look at this. And then I got to start sharing it with people. And, you know, I'm just as excited to see them. On the other hand, I have a ton of photos and videos I haven't posted any of, but I've got a ton that I'm slowly starting to roll out, like 10 a day or so, and kind of testing the waters because I don't know what might push a button and they're going to contact me and say, hey, you know, no more of that. But so far, you know, I think you're right. The embargo's lifted and I'm pretty sure I can but I do have some really awesome videos that I'm going to be posting soon. I haven't seen a whole lot of behind the scenes, you know, videos. I'm looking forward to like the Blu-ray and DVD and stuff to see, you know, any kind of behind the scene stuff. But I know there were 3 or 4 different occasions there were film crews that came and shot like behind the scenes, you know, Sony, like in-house production crews. So I assume it's for the, you know, for the DVD or whatever. So I'm really looking forward to seeing any behind the scenes stuff, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I'm hopefully, you know, we know there's also some scenes that, you know, even Gil has acknowledged publicly were cut, you know, that he says he's proud of and he wants folks to see, although he doesn't want to integrate them into an extended cut of the movie. And so I'm hopeful that we're going to get to see some of that stuff. I always joke that even if we don't get to see it in the current, like, you know, version, that when the 45th anniversary containment unit proton pack hybrid storage steel case collection that has every movie and all the cartoons in it comes out, then we'll get it. But they're very good at holding on to stuff and then getting us to buy another copy because there's something else in it. And it's something that I think that, you know, Sony has become experts at. But hey, I'll keep giving them my money. Why not? How many days did you work total on the shoot?
Wow. I was there for like 3 weeks the first time. Went to New York for a couple weeks and then went back to England for another like 2.5 weeks. So, maybe out of all of that, I don't know, 10 days or so. I'd have to look at my call sheets and stuff, but like maybe about 10 days.
I always wonder because it's like the time we see Slimer in the movie is obviously, like, fairly short. We see him a few times in the movie and he's in there for a couple minutes each time. And so I always wonder, like, how long does it take to generate that content, and in that terms of like rehearsals and, and shooting, etc.
I'll say we did reshoot quite a bit of stuff. I say I went to London twice, and I know that on the second time we shot some things that I had already shot, like picking up the Cheetos, for example. Gotcha. We reshot some of the stuff. So some of it was, they really covered their bases and they shot things on set with the actors, and then also did it on the green, on the blue screen. So a lot of things, there were things that I did that I haven't seen yet that I'm really looking forward to. And I'll just say, like, that involved his tongue all coming out and stuff. And
Gotcha.
so that I would really like to see. I think everything, for the most part, that there are only a couple little things that didn't make it, but everything I think made it,
I'm hopeful that whatever didn't make it, we get to see eventually. And if not, then at least you know what happened. I mean, it's kind of weird to consider, but there's always been some stuff of Slimer that we've never got to see. A lot of Robin Shelby's performance, sort of got eliminated from Ghostbusters 2. And I think I may have joked with you about this, that there's a sequence from that movie where she's talked about this as much as you were trying to eat an entire pizza, which we're totally going to talk about in a minute, because we need to get into this in depth in a few seconds. But like, she ate an entire sandwich. There's a scene of her like apparently devouring an entire submarine sandwich that they are shoving into the hole of the suit, but then they didn't end up using it. So she took a sandwich to the face, but then ended up being cut from the movie. So nobody ever really saw it. And I still want to see that scene. I still want to see the Slimer eats an entire sandwich scene to go alongside this pizza scene to compare it with. Let's talk about that for a minute, because there's a couple other things I definitely want to ask you about, but we're getting into something that's really stupidly important to me. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a pizza fanatic. Like, I'm a nut job about it. I make my own pizza. During the pandemic, I was a New Yorker who's been transplanted to LA for almost 15 years. And when I couldn't get access to good pizza, I just began cold fermenting dough for 3 days and like teaching myself the process of making New York style pizza until I got really good at it. And so to me, pizza is incredibly important. It's like pizza, pinball, and podcast are the 3 P's of my life. So watching or sort of knowing, it was not like I didn't know Slimer was necessarily going to eat a pizza, but the t-shirt that you were wearing when we saw each other is the one with Slimer where he's got the full box of pizza. And so as the merchandise kept coming out that was hinting at Slimer and pizza, there was a little figurine that Hasbro had where he had a pizza. And I was like, he's going to eat a pizza in this movie. Like that, he's going to eat a pizza in this movie and we're going to see it on screen. That's the most exciting thing to me. And then it happened, and it happened in like the most climactic moment where he could have possibly eaten a pizza. Tell me about this. Like, we've talked about this off air and you've told me this little piece that like this pizza was practical, which delights me and like warms my heart to an extent that it shouldn't, because it's a real pizza. But tell me the story. Like, how did you end up eating an entire pizza as Slimer?
Well, we started with a rubber pizza, and puppeteer Robin Guyver puppeteered it. And it's basically just 2 rods that he used to kind of walk, give it some motion. We rehearsed it a few times, and then he kind of would bring it up toward my mouth, and I would reach down and grab it. And it just didn't, it was rubber. It didn't really look right. And so we rehearsed it that way 3 or 4 times, and we had a whole stack of real pizzas there. So it was pretty much always assumed we were going to at least try using the real pizzas. But the first couple tries with the real pizza, it was a little bit stiff on the bottom and it didn't really walk right. And so after, it didn't roll really the right way. But after just a couple takes, it got a little bit more bendy and pliable, and he was able to do the walking it, and he with the real pizza, and Robin Guyver walked the pizza and kind of just used the rods to pull it up toward my mouth. And then I just my hands were my hands, so I had full access. So I just reached down and grabbed the pizza and pulled the whole thing into my mouth, and I had to try to kind of fold it so it would all go into the hole, and, inside, I see outside of the mouth.
Right.
So when Slimer's mouth is open, in fact, if you look, the tonsils are actually my nose. you can see my face very clearly inside because his tonsils are the exact shape of my nose. And then my eyes make out the two indents, to either side of the tonsils. And it's
Gotcha.
pretty clearly a face, when you're looking at it. So there's a little bit of black screen in there where the eyes are. So I can remove that screen.
Right.
To, like if I needed to drink or something, they would remove the screen and put a straw in there. And so I had to remove that screen in order to get the pizza to go down. Otherwise, it's all just going to stop there in the mouth. It's got to look like it's going down. So every time we did 3 or 4 different takes of this pizza. And at first it was hard. It was like crusty. And then over time, they got a little bit more pliable because they worked them, figured out we got to work it and squeeze it and get it, pliable. But so the first few times I had all of these pizzas just coming into my face and just my eyes and running down my chest. And so it was literally coming down and, the suit goes down only to, the rubber, the foam rather comes only down to like my waist.
Yeah.
And it's kind of open. And so there was pizza falling out the bottom of it. What wasn't sticking to my shirt and everything was falling out the bottom of it. So yeah, I was just shoving it in the hole and then it was coming back down, coming down out all over the puppeteers down below me. And we did that 3 or 4 times. And I've got a really awesome take, a behind the scenes. Someone else shot it and sent it, but a behind the scenes of Gil watching, of everybody, but including Gil watching the take. And I know it's the exact take that was used because of how the pizzas fall.
Yeah.
So.
I think that you showed me this video when I was with you face to face, and watching Gil's reaction to this going off the way it goes off is so childlike and fun. He's so excited watching the monitor. But I have to say, like, one, you just disclosed something to me that I was not aware of, which I assumed that the hopping pizza on the table had to be it must be pneumatic, must have hoses in it. So, no, you're telling me that was also literally the part of the practical prop. It's one take. It's just
absolutely. Yep, it was. Yes, it was Robin Guyver. And all he had 2 rods, one on either end of the pizza. And he was literally just, I know we're not on video, but he was just like rolling it along. And it was incredible how I was looking at it going, no way, that's a pizza. And it's just fully like it's walking right along this platform.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And to be real, like, it's this totally unexpected moment in the movie when it happens. The first time it goes off, it is just this total moment of joy. Like, he just, you leap up from the floor and it just wham, you're just, you're slamming it into your mouth. And everybody's reaction in the scene is so fantastic, where every one of the performers is astonished in the moment. You're astonished as a person watching it on screen in the theater, and it just hits. It's like this amazing beat in the movie that I love so much. Like, it cuts into the drama and the action and offers up such a hilarious moment. And then the action continues. But from your take, was Slimer able to digest the possessor? Like, what?
that leaves a whole lot open, leaves a lot of questions open. Like, what? You're right. Is Slimer now possessed? Is he possessed by possessor? So when Slimer flew out, was it Slimer flying out, or was that possessor? It's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, we have all kinds of things we can debate about on that point of this, I think, for fans. But
yeah, but I think what it did show, though, I think as far as character, though, I think that did solidify that Slimer, if nothing else, if it's not just that he doesn't want to harm the family, he's even gone beyond that he's assisting, he's helping to protect them, at that time. I mean, it's a question like, was he just eating the pizza? Did he even know? Did he even know that that pizza was possessed, or was he just, eating because that's what he does? Or was he intentionally, saving them?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But hey, when you consider that other motivation we were talking about earlier, though, the notion that like he stays in the shadows and is generally not seen, that is a very abrupt moment to decide to make yourself very present in front of everyone in a room, in broad daylight. So
yeah. And I think for me, what I thought about is what it reveals is that he's always there, even when you don't see him, because if that pizza hadn't been possessed, Slimer was still there. It means that he's lurking and he's watching, and he just happened to be right there. and he ate it, but if that pizza hadn't been there, he still would have been there. He would have just been watching them. And that tells me that he's often watching them,
Right.
maybe he's under their bed. He's in their, he's watching, he's part of the family and he wants to be a part of it. And so maybe when they're sitting around the dinner table, he's, somewhere, in the room.
Yeah. And it is, I mean, it's an interesting thing to consider of like, he hasn't moved on. We've now seen like 2 movies consecutively where ghosts move on, from their human sort of base corporeal form. And instead we have Slimer, who, I don't know if you subscribe to this theory, but I've heard it said that the longer that you are a ghost, the more that you lose your corporeal shape and form. And so that's kind of what happens to all these ghosts in the Ghostbusters universe. Is at one point they may have looked human, but over the course of how long they've been around, that just sort of forms into something else, Yeah. And so he has to have been around a long time, by that argument. So
yeah. That is how I thought of it. Yeah. That he doesn't have form because he's been deteriorating over time.
Yeah. And that, it leaves a question of like, what is in some ways like Melody jokes about her unfinished business, but clearly she has some, and that's what lets her move on, is that she is integral to stopping something. I'm not necessarily of the personal mindset that everything happens for a reason at a narrative level, but Peter Venkman is, it's like, call it fate, call it luck, call it karma. In the Ghostbusters universe, some levels of predestiny exist. And so it makes me wonder, like, what is Slimer's, is this what he's predestined for, is that he has to eat the right thing and then he can move on.
Right. Well, hopefully it's that easy.
Yeah. Right. Like he's just got to find the right snack. And if he can find
like
it,
a kumquat or something, like, the kumquat, it's it. And he did.
Yeah. He'd never had a dragon fruit before. Right. But the first time he has one, he finally gets to dissipate and become part of the fabric of the universe because of quantum physics. I do want to ask you this question. Like, this is not something that I think, you have to think about necessarily as like canon or representing what Sony thinks about the character. But for you, where is he now? Like when he leaves the firehouse and he takes off and the Hell's Kitchen, the sewer dragon, and he are sort of taking off into the distance at the end of the movie, where has Slimer gone? Do you think he comes back to the firehouse later? Do you think that he's out in New York now, kind of partying again?
Well, I think the whole them flying away and the mini puffs in the truck is all to say we're leaving New York, or that the ghosts can leave New York, and now Ghostbusters are going to have to go gather them up from further places than just New York City. The answer to that question though depends on whether Slimer is possessed by Possessor or not, because Possessor would take him wherever Possessor wants to go. But I think Slimer would come back immediately to the firehouse.
Interesting.
And so, because I'm not the writer of the next one, I hope Slimer has a role in the next one. I hope they get to the bottom of all these questions. I'd love to know that, but Slimer will come back to the firehouse. Slimer will come back to the firehouse. Whether Slimer's possessed or whatever, I don't know what's going to happen, but I would just think, like, in my head, Slimer will come back to the firehouse.
Right. See, I choose to believe that Slimer ate the Possessor. Slimer saved us all from the risk of the Possessor because within that dimension, he can eat other ghosts. I'm just going with it. But then could he be his own form of Ghostbuster, who the way that he busts ghosts is he just snacks. He just finds out after eating that pizza that he can just eat other ghosts. Would be kind of a fun, weird story for Slimer.
They would have to repair the whole attic again because for the second time it's been destroyed though. So
yes.
Right. So I guess there is that caveat. They're going to have to repair the place again.
Yeah. Or he could just share a room with Trevor. It's fine. Like now that they're buddies, he could just move in with him. Yeah. He could play the drums that we don't get to see enough of in the movie.
Right.
They could be, that's Slimer. He's going to be the new drummer for AC/DC.
His bedroom was a whole complete bedroom. That whole house was like a complete, it's like, wow, why didn't they, there's so many things that I think, wow, why didn't we, it would have been a 6-hour movie that, like all of the details, the ceiling of the attic was all completely repaired with tin. And it was like you could walk in and go, oh yeah, it was destroyed, wasn't it? And now here it is repaired, but we didn't get to see that, but man, the art designers are just unbelievable. Like the detail, like I said, you barely see Trevor's, you might see the corner of his bedroom in the movie. You might you don't see his bedroom,
Right.
But it's detail, like every, his socks, like it's, the whole, the books on his, nightstand. It's crazy how detailed, the art design is on the set. It's amazing.
It seems like it. I wish that we got to see more of it in the movie, and I hope that means maybe we'll get to see some of it more in like vignettes and stuff, behind the scenes. I know that some of it has come out because there's been photos of it, and there's been a few, Luke Whitelock has been posting a lot of stuff, on Instagram and what have you, and so some of that stuff is coming out, and it's being revealed like just how deep the detail was and those sets, and it would have been fun, I think, to. Like, I mean, to be real, I joke about this, but I'm like, okay, cool. You have a modular firehouse set. You have all these little individual pieces, and you brought it back to the United States. So when are you setting it up? Can I come visit? When are you going to charge tickets? You just set it all back up. Let us come in, charge us $200. I'll come. That'll just photo op for the day, But it is kind of wild to consider it that like that is the firehouse. And so in the future, if they make another movie, like there has to be some sort of continuity to fixing the firehouse again, because you're right. Like the attic has been destroyed and what have you. I did want to ask you this. What was it like for you, working with Finn Wolfhard on set? Like, did you find that to be a fun experience? Did you like working with him?
Yeah, he was fun. I try not to, we were working. So, I'd let him be in his character and I be in mine. And, but like in the mornings when we'd come in and we were not in character, then, we would talk. And I was also working on a movie at the same time on a movie called Y2K, where I play a robot with, Jaden Martell.
Gotcha.
From It. And so Finn and Jaden are friends from both working on It. And so mostly I would go back and, when I went back and forth, I would kind of take messages back and forth between. So I would, have opportunity to talk to Finn about what Jaden said and then, talking about It. But he was great. He was very friendly and, we all stayed in the same hotels and stuff. So we got to see him like in the car rides back and got to eat dinner with them. And so he was fantastic on the set. It was, he's very professional. And so it's kind of in the same way as I try to, it's not really like Kevin talking to Finn so much on the set,
Right.
It's like he's in character and I'm in character. And so we're kind of just two different people at that moment. But before and after the day, before the filming part of the day, he was very friendly and, we'd talk and he'd come like he would come over to we had like little dressing tents, basically dressing room tents between the stages. And we would go back and forth to each other's and, talk to each other and stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think it's so great that you all have such a positive and sort of open working relationship on set, like amongst the folks who worked on the movie, the folks who've talked about their experiences, all talk about this sort of very positive, upbeat, communal sense of, working on something together. And there doesn't seem like there was a lot of personalities. It was more everybody kind of collaborating together, which to me I find interesting because of how much tension and conflict there was in the industry as you all were doing this. Like you were basically like shooting the last things that were being shot before the two strikes began, so it's so interesting to me that like the sense that you all had being in England almost was sort of like removed from a lot of that tension and anxiety I think that existed here in LA. And I don't mean to speak for you in that sense. I just mean watching it from the outside, but I don't know if you want to comment on that, if you feel similarly, but
Well, it's interesting because I hear people talk about how, all of the people who work on Ghostbusters are always so friendly and inviting and accessible and all of that stuff. And it's interesting. I hear that, but I think that's attributed to the fact that we all got to work on a project like that. I say that like that to mean I worked on a lot of movies that were not great. Directors are screaming and people are stressed and we've been working in 16 hours and we still got 3 shots to go. And, it's not fun sometimes. And, that sometimes leads to after the fact to a not great reaction, when people want to ask you about it or something.
Right.
But But I think the fact that every person on every Ghostbusters that's ever worked on any Ghostbusters film, when you ask them about it, they immediately like you're asking them about pizza, right? They're like, what? Oh
Right.
yeah. I think that, goes back to the Ghostbusters, it's Eric and Ghost Corps and Sony. And I know I'll speak for myself from the day that they contacted me with, hey, are you interested in doing this? And they sent me the info and the contract. Everybody has been so incredibly, not just nice, because that's a throwaway word, but they've like inviting and helpful and like, can I get you anything? And on the set, it extends 100% across the day. I never saw, for real, I never saw one person shout on the set. I never saw one person get upset. And that's so unusual on a film set. We've all been there all hours and hours and hours.
Sure.
Sometimes you just want to get upset over lunch, but to be on a set for weeks, day after day for weeks, and to see everybody just so happy to be there, that really was the case. And it's kind of weird because you could see people getting excited, film crew, people who work on films all the time. They work with celebrities all the time, but to come around the corner and see like Slimer on a stand sitting there, their eyes would light up, or even just to see a ghost trap. Mm-hmm. People who have worked on movies their whole life. Oh, look at that. They get all excited about a ghost trap. So there's just something about it that to work on it. There's nothing negative about it. There's really nothing you can complain about. And so to come out at the end, anything other than like super psyched about having worked on it, I don't know how you could do that. So I think that explains it. It's not that anybody's putting on, somebody talked to us and said, hey, listen, you got to be really cool when you go out there. That isn't it. So,
no, I mean, it's kind of true. Like, I feel like everybody who worked on this movie seems like they were a fan in some capacity of Ghostbusters, and sort of along those lines. Maybe this is a question we can kind of begin to wrap up on, because I value your time and I'm sure you do too. And I appreciate you've taken an hour to talk with us. Would you want to do it again?
Hang on. Let me think about that for a second. Yes.
I mean, okay, you do it again, right? Here's, I guess, a good question, a way to phrase this question a little differently and to think about. Obviously, okay, yes, you want to do it again because any of us who were ever involved in Ghostbusters want to do it again. If somebody asked me, like, do you want to come back and, shoot people on the carpet again? Yes, absolutely. I'll come back to whatever city you want me to be in, I'll be there. What would make you most excited about a future opportunity to work on a Ghostbusters movie? Like, what would you hope to be able to accomplish with the character next?
Well, we've talked a little bit about it. I get real into the characters that I play, and I am in the head space of Slimer, and I miss him, to be honest. Like I've even made a point to call Arya and said, hey, can I come into the shop and just come see him? And I've done that, just gone in to just go in and say hi to Slimer. And I know that's weird, but I feel like I got to really like connect,
Yeah.
So I guess the thing that would make me most excited is to continue his story and his life and all of the stuff we talked about. Like, maybe he does have some unfinished business, and maybe we can get to that, and maybe we can answer the questions about what's in his head and what's his desire and what does he need, and can someone help him fill that? And I would love to be a part of telling that story,
Yeah.
I mean, leaving out all of the work. Like, yeah, it's great career wise. Obviously, I would love to do that, go to England again for sure. But as far as the character goes, I love Slimer. I feel like I've put a lot of thought into becoming Slimer. And so I would like to be there to be a part of his life, as much as I can in the future,
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, I think that really makes a lot of sense, and that you've not just, and this is a way to sort of maybe wrap this back to what we were talking about earlier about puppeteers, right? Is that there's a difference, I think, between your puppeteering parts of a character and you have to be that limb in that moment to be consistent with the rest of the performance that's happening, versus if you have to embody the character, you have to think about what that motivation is. You have to think about all of that and do sort of the interior soul searching and almost like, applying the soul of another character onto your own to come on to set, and own that performance in the moment. It's what separates in some ways the actor or performer from puppeteer. Yeah. Right. And I hope you have another opportunity to do it for sure. You know, I love watching you do it. So I'm like, yes, come on, let's make another one immediately and let's have you back on.
Yeah, thanks. You know, I've as far as the puppeteer thing, I've been playing creatures, you know, animals. I played Mickey Mouse at Disneyland. I played Brainy Smurf. You know, I've done a lot of creatures inside, and I've really figured, I've learned, you know, that any little tiny movement sells an emotion. You know, if you tip your head down at an angle, it really does sell. It takes away power. You know, it sells not necessarily sadness, but it's not the same as somebody up. But, you know, any little movement, you know, a shoulder being off versus square. There are so many things that I think, you know, I have puppeteered. So say when you're puppeteering, I think it's a matter of watching and making that creature mimic the feelings that you want it to have.
Right.
And I think that's different from acting, in that when you're acting, you know, if you're just playing a role, let's take away the creature suits for a minute and just say you're just an actor. You know, you're not necessarily wanting to say to the audience, hey, look at me, I'm sad now. You know, you want to just be sad, right?
Right.
And you want
the
audience to just recognize, no, he's sad. He's not telling you that he's sad. You know, like, oh, I'm angry. You know, you don't have to do that, but you can be angry and they'll recognize that you're angry. And so the same applies to a suit. I don't think, you know, in a puppet, you're telling the audience, this puppet's angry by, I'm going to do these things that you recognize as angry. When you're in the suit, you just feel it. You're just angry. You're just it. And you're not telling the audience, hey, I'm this. Right. Look at this. Look at what I do because I'm angry. You're just angry. And when what you do comes naturally and comes automatically and generally isn't that stereotypical thing that people would recognize as being angry, you know?
Right.
But because in your head you're angry, it's obvious that's that bird, that big bird or whatever is angry, you know? And so that to me, I think is like, as far as embodying the character and being an actor inside the character and living, you know, I feel like I lived Slimer, like I was Slimer, you know, when I was on the set and Trevor came up to me, he was talking to Slimer. He was saying, hey, Slimer, you know, and actually off the set, when I was walking down the stairs and going back to my dressing room, everybody said, come on this way, Slimer. You know, everybody calls me Slimer everywhere, you know, when I'm in the suit.
Right.
And the truth is I prefer that. And even I guess I started all this to say I started Mickey Mouse and all that. I don't talk to people when I'm in it. I'm like, hey, what time is the break? Or, you know, if I'm in it, I'm in it, you know, and when I'm Slimer, I'm Slimer. And I don't want somebody coming up, hey, Kevin, you know, we're going to have this for lunch. Do you want this? Do you want, you know, like, I'm not that right now, you know? And so, forget what made me start talking about all of that, but, the puppeteer versus, the actor, for me, I felt when I was inside Slimer and still to this day, when I think about it, when I go back in the studio and get in, I feel like I become Slimer and my emotions kind of embody his. You know?
Yeah.
So
I hope that you have another opportunity to sort of put on the suit and put on Slimer, and sort of embody that, because you did an amazing job for all of us. And thank you so much for the performance, because, it adds so much to the movie. And I really just thank you for soldiering and eating an entire pizza.
Yeah, like, my pleasure.
If there's, maybe this is a good question to leave it on. That's kind of fun. If there is one food that Slimer needs to eat in order to move on, what do you think it is?
Oh man.
It's not pizza, clearly.
Right. It's got to be something that he hasn't eaten yet. It's probably going to be something like kale. It's probably kale.
It's like the least likely thing, furthest from what he's eating now, right?
He'll never get around to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like chickpeas or something.
If he accidentally haunts a Whole Foods, he might somehow end up eating some of their garlicky kale and some of their chickpeas. And suddenly experience health food. And that will be the thing that causes him to have quantum physics intercede. And he'll become part of the fabric of the universe. That's the healthier part of it. I love that idea. Kevin, this was a lot of fun. And I really want to say thank you for coming on and, you know, sharing all of the stories that you've shared with us. if you ever want to come back on Extraplasm again, you're always welcome to come back on. And I hope that, if you do, you get an opportunity to come on and tell us about the next time that you're going to play a ghost in our universe and hopefully Slimer again. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Had a lot of fun.
Awesome. Me too. And I hope we get to talk to you again soon. Thank you.
All right. For sure. Anytime.
That about wraps things up for Extraplasm this week. I want to say thank you once again to Kevin Mangold for coming on the show and being so generous with his time, for being so engaging and so thoughtful in terms of bringing an amazing performance to the screen for us and reprising one of the most beloved characters in Ghostbusters. It was so fantastic to see Slimer on the big screen when I got to see it in the theaters every single time that I watched the movie, but it's even more wonderful now having got to meet the person who was inside the suit doing that performance and obviously eating an entire pizza, which is so cool. Because when would that not be cool? Beyond that, I want to say thank you also to Brendan Pearce at Badoochi Studios, who provides our logo, and of course to vaporwave artist MAGNAVOX, whose version of Ghostbusters serves as our theme music each week. And of course, I need to say thank you to you as well, because without you, what would a podcast be? An audience is what makes a podcast worthwhile, and I love hearing from you each week. If you have something you want to share with the podcast, some observation you've noticed about Ghostbusters or Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, or just something you want to, sort of bring to the forefront of conversation, feel free to reach out to me at Extraplasm on Instagram, on X, extraplasompodcast@gmail.com if you're into the email thing, or of course you can find Extraplasm Podcast on Facebook and over on YouTube. Don't be a stranger. I'm ready to believe you've got something to share. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Thanks for being part of my favorite fandom in the entire world. And as we all kind of wind down a bit from Ghostbusters Frozen Empire and start to consider what's going to happen for the 40th anniversary, remember what Ernie Hudson says every week.
Try to have fun and always keep on busting. Take care.